All right, so you're live, Scott, and I've made you host again.
Great. Thank you.
Have a great class.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Hi Scott, how are you?
Good, Joe. How are you?
I'm doing great. So are you fine today?
Yeah.
Feeling fine?
Yep. Doing well.
All
How
right
about
then. So what
yourself?
are we learning? What are we learning today?
Today is just a general overview of photo composition.
Great. I love your classes actually.
Oh,
I
thank
don't
you. Thanks.
I'm into video making and music making, that's why.
Yeah. Oh, terrific. Well, thank you. How's everything with you?
It's great actually.
Yeah.
So have you made me the co-host? Yeah, it's there. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
you're all set to go. And got the chat box open too. So all we need is a class.
Right. We're waiting for people. And I think Harry was going to push this class to
Yeah.
live.
Yeah. In fact, it's already streaming. So we are all set to go. We only need a class and
Yeah.
we're in business. Joe, whereabouts are you?
I'm sorry.
Where do you live?
I live in India,
Okay.
northern part of India.
Northern part of India. Okay.
Yeah. So you should come sometime. It's a really tourist place where I live.
That is one of my top places that for visiting. That's where I really want to visit India someday. Yeah, I
So
know.
this is Himachal. You have to come to Himachal, Shimla.
Yeah.
It's a place that like lots of tourists come from out of India and India as well.
Okay. Well, that's on my list.
Yeah, you should come and you should give me a call here. I was
Okay.
into travel business before this.
Oh,
So
really?
yeah,
Okay.
you should give me a call when you come.
Yeah. I guess the travel business kind of hit a little bit of a wall with the
Right.
pandemic, huh?
Right. Since last year.
Yeah.
I
So
think hopefully, yeah,
no, go ahead.
I think hopefully people would be starting like traveling more
Yeah.
by the next year maybe.
Yeah. I'm hoping so. I just got the vaccine, the first dose of the vaccine here. So I'm already dreaming about some traveling in the not too distant future.
Yeah, you told me yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but how many doses you have to take? Three, right?
Uh, let's see. I have to take two, actually. Yeah.
Two. Okay.
Yeah. I have one more in about 3 weeks, and then I'm done. But then you have to wait like 2 weeks after that second dose
Okay. Then
before
you are
you're
totally
considered
secure.
fully immunized. Yeah.
Yeah. Then you're secure to go anywhere.
Yeah. I mean, I think
Hopefully.
everybody is still taking precautions with face masks and stuff like that. But
And yeah, that we should do. Yeah. Exactly.
yeah.
India is on number 3, US is on number 1, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's been bad here. So
Really, really bad.
I'm glad that the vaccine is really starting to get out. Every day I hear more and more people getting vaccinated. So that's good news.
And I hear that more people are getting vaccinated in USA, like not only the older adults, but the young people as well.
Yeah. 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 In some states, they've opened it up to just everybody over the age of 16. So that's really good.
Yeah, that's great. I think we have people coming.
Yes, we do. Hi, Jen.
Hello there, Scott. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for asking.
That's good.
When's your next class while we're waiting?
My next one, oh, I have one tomorrow morning on just the basics of the iPhone. So that's more
Okay.
of a tech class that I'm doing. But I have one tomorrow afternoon. I think it's at 4 Eastern on landscape photography.
Oh, I might have to sign up for that one.
Yeah.
Okay, that's because
Yeah.
I like to do outdoor stuff. So I'll
Yeah.
check that out. Thanks.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll do that while we're waiting.
Yeah. Yeah, those are my favorite, landscapes and wildlife.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in that. Let me see.
Yeah, in fact, we're putting together a whole series. So we have one next week. Just this is also on nature photography, but it's a whole bundle. So we have one on flowers and close-ups of nature, and then I have one that will probably come out in the next 3 weeks on wildlife,
Okay.
wildlife photography. So
I'll keep my eye out. I'll go check it out.
yeah,
Let's see.
wildlife is the most challenging because animals don't seem to want to stand and pose.
That's all in the timing, right?
Yeah.
How's the 9th? Okay.
Yeah. Hello to everybody else steering in. Good to see everybody. I will give it about another minute and then I'll get us started. Just want to make sure everybody gets streamed in here.
Sir, do you know Inkscape?
Inkscape.
Like Illustrator, but it's free?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I have not
Okay.
used it.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I'm not all that versed even with Illustrator, but I should check Inkscape out. Yeah.
But I was saying if you do and you like it and want to teach it, that would be nice.
Oh, okay. So Carol, have you used it?
No, but I did take 3 Illustrator classes through Route 9 Library through Meetup, and then found out if you want to save it as a JPEG, you got to pay $60 for the upgrade. So I said, that.
Yeah.
This is for Silhouette, for the Cricut machine.
Oh,
But
yeah.
then, I had taken Illustrator and Photoshop years and years ago. So then I heard about Inkscape.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to check that out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And how about Audacity too while you're at it?
Okay. Okay. Sounds like a plan. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Good to see everybody. I am here with my colleague, Joe, who is available to help you with any technical issues you might be having during the class. But looks like everybody seems to be in pretty good shape so far. And this class is just designed to be a very macro view of photography composition, but we are, I was just talking to Jen about this, we are rolling out a lot of classes focused on specific genres of photography, like wildlife photography, landscape photography, and so forth. So, so look for those on the schedule. And I'll go ahead and get us started. Okay, great. Okay, so I'll stop periodically and we can talk and have some questions. This class is really informal. I've got a lot of visuals for you just to kind of give you some ideas on the photography you might like to do, but always interested in hearing other people's opinions about photography and also questions they have. So, so we'll break periodically to talk a little bit. So a little bit more about me. I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, right outside of Washington, D.C. In addition to serving as a Get Set Up guide, I'm a photographer and writer. I especially enjoy nature photography, but I do some portrait photography as well, and dabble in all kinds of other photography too. I've never really been good at specializing. And I am here because I love the interactive learning on Get Set Up. I love seeing familiar faces in my classes and also meeting new people. And I really love the community learning mission that we're on. It's really terrific. Just a little bit more about Get Set Up. We are recording this, so if you would like a recording of the class, you can email us at help@getsetup.io. We're here to help you learn, and your classes are led by people who have had to learn these things along the way themselves, rather than big experts in the field or anything like that. I'm just an amateur for the most part on photography. So, I'm just sharing some things that I've learned along the way. Ideally, we can see everybody on camera. If you're not too shy about that, it's a great way to develop the social connections here on Get Set Up. If you are joining us by live stream, welcome. Glad you're watching. The best way to participate in our classes is to actually register for a class and join us, and then you can participate in the discussions and ask questions. And lastly, Get Set Up is not paid to promote any specific products. I don't think I have any that I'm going to mention in this particular class, but in case I do, it is not meant to be an endorsement, just educational. So what I want to walk through today is just understanding some key terms and techniques that might help you, just a little bit of the jargon in photography, to talk about the different genres in photography. We'll talk about taking advantage of the environment you're in to get the best results in your photos, and also to develop your own style. This hopefully will inspire you to sort of give some thought to what type of photography you'd like to do, whether that be focusing on portraits or just doing snapshots, whatever. Hopefully this will be inspiring for you. I want to stop there for a couple of minutes and just check to see if there's anything specific that anybody was hoping to get out of this class or hoping to learn. If anybody wants to share, I'd love to hear about it.
Like, I've taken a class where, like, we learn, I don't know what you call it, like that tic-tac-toe board, how you have the things positioned right, sometimes using diagonals. You know, maybe if you're doing a person, they should face into the picture, not out.
Okay.
Those kind of things.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
And also, I have a request. I'm one of those people who started photography with the old 35 millimeter. And now that I'm using a digital camera, I have a point and shoot. I find it hard to do composition because of the light. You know, when you look into the viewfinder, you look into the viewfinder,
Right.
even though it's big, I just find it, and sometimes I do, set up the little, squares,
Right.
but I don't know if anybody else has this trouble too. I just find it much harder to look around in the frame of the picture because of the digital the way it's just set up. And sometimes I miss things. In other words, I can't see. And so the composition, or sometimes there's something in the photo that I didn't realize was going to be in there. So I don't know if anybody else has that problem, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
I find difficulty using the digital with the lighting. I don't even know if it's going to come out because it reflects onto the camera.
Yeah.
And you have like the sun or something like that, so you just point and shoot basically. So is there any way to help that?
Yeah, with point and shoots, it's a little bit more of a challenge. But sometimes even when the lighting conditions are a little lousy, you can work those to your advantage. I think in Wendy's case, it sounds a little bit like the viewfinder's not really big enough, right? Or that it's
no, it's this big.
Okay. Okay.
It's the lighting. In other words, digital photography is so different from 35 millimeter.
Yeah.
I've been doing digital for 10 years, but I'm still finding it. I even bought a camera. In fact, my camera actually has a viewfinder on top. So I actually have two, but I'm talking about, the traditional digital, whatever viewfinder.
Right.
It's just so hard to see everything that's in the frame,
Yeah.
because of the lighting. I guess mostly outdoors. So I hope I'm explaining this.
Yeah, I think so. And as the first part of this class, I focus a lot on lighting. So I'll go through that, and then maybe we can talk and see what questions that raises, or maybe what answers that provides for you. So, yeah. And I did see Charlie's question about phones. Yeah, this class is really designed to be pretty device agnostic. So if you are a phone photographer, this should be fine too. I think this applies no matter what you're using. There are some cameras and even some phones that are going to have more capabilities than others, but this could apply for just about anything you're using. Okay. Well, let's get started by talking a little bit about the different genres. And I'll be going over some of these just with some examples just for reference and inspiration. There's landscape photography, and a lot of these overlap too. Nature and wildlife. There is architectural and real estate. A lot of people make a living doing that. There's portraiture, another thing that is a big business. Still life photography, which is a little more artistic. Food photography, that is a growing enterprise because of some of the food delivery services like DoorDash and Postmates. I think they are hiring a lot of photographers to go out and do really nice photo shoots of the dishes at different restaurants, and then putting them up on their websites to entice people to order. So that's one area during the pandemic that really started to thrive. Travel photography, I've always had a hard time really defining travel photography because that could be just about anything. But for the purposes of this class, I think I'm going to talk about it in the sense of capturing a different lifestyle or a different custom or culture or things like that when it comes to people, and also just different topography, different scenery, and so forth. And then lastly, macro photography, making very small things very big. And that does require, for the most part, specific types of lenses and other equipment, but like a tripod and things like that. But sometimes you can even achieve that with a phone. So So here are just some examples of nice landscape photography. You know, flowers are always nice, great skies. This is one I took in Sonoma County in California a while back. Mountains are always incredible to take pictures of. This looks like it might be in Yosemite or someplace like that. And I include some coastal shots here when I talk about landscapes. That may be a category all on its own, but I'm just sort of wrapping it in here. But coastal shots can be really incredible too. And then, of course, you've got nature and wildlife, and that can include everything from, wildflowers and butterflies and insects to birds to mammals and even sea life, sea mammals, and also fish. And then you have architectural photography, which can be pretty broad in and of itself. Some people really specialize in more modern architecture. Others go the more traditional route, and some just kind of get artistic with it. And then there is portrait photography, and that can include family pictures, just individuals getting their a very professional portrait done of themselves, say for their career, or some get them for dating profiles on dating sites. Others get them for their social media, like LinkedIn, things like that. So, and of course, that also includes children. That's a very popular area. Still life photography can be just about anything that is inanimate. Flowers, vases, musical instruments that are just sitting or not being played, any kind of shells, even something like a ball mitt and ball glove. And then there is food photography, as I mentioned, and that is a interesting field because I took a food photography class a while back and found out that in some instances, the food that you think you're seeing is not really what you're seeing. And so when really serious food photographers are doing their work, they're substituting things like, I think it's ice cream. They actually use mashed potatoes. I don't know if that's still the case, but a while back, that's what they did. And I think even with wine, they might have substituted something else like grape juice or something like that. So, so that is a interesting specialty. But a lot of us just love to take pictures of our food with our smartphones or digital cameras. You see that happening all the time. Back in the day when we could go to restaurants, you get this beautiful dish served to you, and you want to capture it in a photo or things like that. So you can even do close-ups of food like desserts and things. Travel photography can capture everything from things that are more in the architectural realm to just some local festivities or regional festivities to just some lifestyle things, shops or merchants on the street or traditions like tango in Argentina. And then macro photography is going to look something like this, where you do extreme close-ups of very small things, and you need to have a macro lens. I would imagine now they're even creating special lenses to attach to iPhones or other smartphones, so you can do this. Some people can really get close up in terms of the composition, and you can do that with flowers and with water droplets on plants, and even with things with food of any kind, or coffee beans or anything like that. So that you can get really creative with macro photography. So let's talk about lighting. And I'm going to tell you some things that I try to follow. I try to look for really even lighting or interesting background lighting. I'm not one that really enjoys a lot of really harsh contrast, at least for outdoor photography. I really try to avoid that. So midday, unless it's overcast or I'm in some shade, I'm not likely to be taking a lot of pictures. I might take some snapshots just for memory purposes, but if I'm doing anything that trying to take a picture that I might want to frame or put on my Instagram account or something like that, I may wait until the sun is starting to set a little. Here is an example of that. I just don't find this photo really appealing because of the way the sun is coming in. It's looks like it's midday, and some people might like this. It just wasn't really to my taste. Whereas something like this, you've got softer light. I think maybe part of that is the flowers are a little more distant from the window, and the curtain is diffusing the light a little bit. But to me, this is a much more attractive photo. Here's another one that I don't particularly like. I think there's a lot of harsh shadowing here, as opposed to this, where again, you've got a curtain kind of diffusing the light, and it's just got a softer touch to it and a little nicer. And here's an example of some outdoor photography. Here's a street. I don't know where this is, but you know, I don't know what time of day this is, but I get the feeling it might be mid to late afternoon, and the shadowing here is all uneven, and it's a very pretty alley or street and buildings there. But I really like something like this. Now, obviously, this is a cloudy day. Sometimes clouds can add some real drama, real nice drama to a photo. And here the lighting is much more even, and it's a nice street scene. Here's one that I took. This was at the National Zoo at a petting farm where they had a lot of barnyard animals. I shot this at like probably 11 o'clock in the morning, maybe. And I don't really like it simply because of the way the sun's shining down on this animal, as opposed to this. This I took in Iceland, and Iceland is typically overcast, so it makes it a lot easier to take wildlife photography there. And these are some of the semi-wild horses. I think they actually have chips, from what I understand, in there, so they round it up in the winter time. But they just roam freely all over the place. And so I shot that, and I just thought the overcast skies really actually made this a better picture than if I had shot this, say, in a really bright sunny day at about high noon. And here's another one. I don't particularly like the way this is casting down with the shadows on the butterfly and the flowers, as opposed to this. Sometimes you can find diffusers and things like that. If you're really trying to set up a shot, you can do that to block out sun. Shade is always helpful as well, but I would much rather go for a look like this. This one's not horrible. I probably shouldn't have a thumbs down here, but you know, it's a midday little shadow here on the horse, as opposed to this. I really love getting these light leaks into a photo. So this obviously looks like it's at sunset, and maybe, I don't know, early evening. And this is a nice effect to get sometimes, and a lot more of a stunning photo. Maybe not stunning, but just a little more alluring. And one thing that I try to do is to shoot during the magic hours, as they call it. And that would be early morning or evening, like that horse picture I just showed you. I took this picture at, I think, dawn. It was dawn. It was on this island in the North Sea. It's a Dutch-owned island, and I was there for a wedding, and I got up really early in the morning to shoot this. This probably wouldn't have been all that interesting a shot if I had gotten it, say, even mid to late morning, but that early in the morning, the sun adds all kinds coming up. It adds all kinds of color to the sky and the ground and the mist. And that's just a great time to get some pretty interesting photos, especially with landscapes. Another one, this is in the Chesapeake Bay area, shot in the early morning. And this one I shot also, I think, I'm not sure which time of day I shot this one, but it was obviously at a time when the sun is creating this golden look in the background. They call this call these the magic hours, but also the golden hours. Sometimes you'll see them referred to as that. And here's another nice example where you can get nice silhouettes, things like that. Really works well for portraits. You can see this nice kind of golden lighting in the background. And sometimes you can get some pretty stunning skies when you're taking it at sunset. Another example. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to stop there for a sec, since there was a lot of interest in talking about lighting, and love to know your thoughts or questions that you might have about all of that. Anybody?
Okay, so I'm getting ready to take more pictures for my website. It involves like greeting cards and jewelry. So should I take that like around like close to the window, like during the power hours, like near sunset or early first thing in the morning? I don't know, it's best to do that.
For an indoor shot like that, I don't think you're necessarily as time bound. I think you probably don't want it sitting on a windowsill necessarily, but if you just got some nice natural light streaming in, you might want to diffuse it a little bit with some thin curtains or something like that. But I think you could take pictures of your product there just about any time of day.
Okay, as long as it has the right lighting to it, it's not too dark, doesn't come out too shaded or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, is it best to take pictures like with my phone? I have a camera that I don't use that often, but should I take it with my phone, or it really doesn't matter?
So for depending on what kind of phone you have, the iPhone, I think, still takes pictures at only about 12 megapixels. Surprisingly, because the iPhone is, in some respects, a pretty incredible camera, but it has an incredible camera with it. The Android phones, some of them take much higher resolution pictures.
Okay.
I've had a couple people in my classes say that their phone takes pictures at like 100 megapixels or something like that, which just knocked me for a loop. I had no idea that they could do that.
Yeah, some of them. I have an Android phone.
Okay, yeah.
Is there any way that you can check to see what your camera on your phone does? I mean, is there some place on the settings that you can check that out?
Yeah, I think if you go to it may be just on your general settings, if you go into those, or if you have any trouble finding it, you can probably just Google it if you know the brand of your phone, and it will probably tell you that way what the megapixel count is on.
All right, thank you. Now, what's a good resolution to?
Okay, so I would say even at 12, you're not doing too badly. It's when you start to think about printing things that can make a difference. And even a 12 megapixel picture, if it's shot well and it's really sharp and things like that, that can work pretty well. But if you're wanting to get a really, really big version of that in print, it may not be quite as sharp as if you take something with a really high-end digital camera and you blow it up to like poster size or something like that. But usually if you're just doing things mostly for marketing digitally or displaying digitally or something like that, an iPhone is pretty good, and an Android phone is also just fine. So I've taken some photos on an iPhone and actually had them and actually sold them. So they can work fine.
Okay. Like I have a camera, it's a Canon camera. I only used it once, and I paid a pretty pricey price for it, like about $300.
Yeah.
So maybe so I could get the right effect, maybe I should use the camera instead of my Android phone.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I think we're thinking about I would like to come up with a class on just sort of the basics of your camera, of your digital camera, that sort of would be universal enough that it would apply to just about any camera, just certain things like yeah, like controlling your shutter speed and things like that. So yeah.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah. Wendy, does that help you at all, talking about the lighting? I know it's more a practical thing where you're not able to see everything, but.
Well, I've taken some photography classes before, so I already know about the light being better in the morning and the evening. I've just realized that I think it's just a universal problem, I guess, with all digital cameras, whether you're taking photos with your cell phone, because I have that problem too. If I take a photo with a cell phone, it's just the nature. Sometimes I don't have I can't be outdoors, later in the day. I am in a garden in the middle of the day. So I guess maybe I'm having more of that trouble in the middle of the day, being able to see.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I think everybody's has that problem. It just comes with digital cameras, but it's very frustrating I got so used to being able to see all the items in a little box with my 35 millimeter. And then when I got the digital camera, I'm like, but I can't see when I'm photographing, or, I can't see as many details.
Yeah.
I can't see, but like I said, sometimes I miss things. Like it looks fine when I take a picture, but then when I look at it later, I'm going, oh my God, I didn't see that, and I just, so sorry, I'm not really sure, but I appreciate hearing about lighting and, but I liked that photo. I hate to say, that old street looked like it was Europe with the shadows. I love shadows, and I think it's just I like all kinds of photography. Yes, I like to just be able to see things. I like both of your examples. I liked both pictures equally, but I've taken some great photos, like many years ago with my old 35 millimeter in an old medieval Italian city of Gubbio later in the day and had these beautiful shadows on the building. So anyway, I'll let somebody else talk.
And that's interesting. I don't know if you noticed, I did not have a thumbs down on that particular picture because I'm a little ambivalent about that one. I don't know that that really destroyed the picture compared to what it might do in other cases. But it is an example of the different effects you're going to get depending on the time of day and the lighting conditions outside and things like that. So,
well, what I find interesting is that sometimes you think that the photo you took wasn't that great, but then somebody else will go, "Hey, that's really great."
I know. My wife has framed things that I took and hated, and she thinks they're just the greatest things in sliced bread. So I don't know.
And and writers are that way too.
Yeah.
It's like they thought that they wrote something under par, and it becomes like a masterpiece. So
Yeah. Okay, and I noticed Carolyn had a question too about shooting in front of a window and not have the image so dark. I'm not trying to follow that question a little bit. I think it's how close your item is to the window so that there's enough sufficient streaming light coming in. Is that what you were thinking of, Carolyn, or am I misinterpreting your question?
I think what I was thinking of, sometimes I'll take a photo and maybe the person is there. Like, for instance, I went to a convention and it was a very famous person there. He was standing in front of the window and I really wanted to snap that photo, so I did. But of course, it's so dark, you can't make him out. And so I didn't know what. And that's happened more than once. And I didn't know how to correct that without
saying
something
got you.
To the subject.
Yeah. So that one, it might be taken care of in editing. And I think we need a class on photo editing because I think unfortunately, that's kind of a par for the course when you're taking somebody say a lot of bright light behind them or a window or something like that. They're going to be more shadowy or silhouetted. But there are ways in the editing process, if you wanted to use it on not just Photoshop, but one of these free photo editing tools that might be out there to make some tweaks to it that would fix that.
I guess also I was wondering, was there a particular place I should have stood, maybe to the side?
Yeah. There's also an interesting comment here too about on your digital camera looking at the histogram before you shoot the picture, because it will help you sort of adjust the shutter and everything else. This gets into some of the camera lingo, but that might
Instagram. Yeah, but I think I had a cell phone that day.
Yeah.
Carolyn, there is a class that for Google, tips and things for using your Google for photos, because I took it a couple weeks ago. And it does talk about from all these different apps that are free apps that you can use to, like you said, crop your photos or highlight your photos or change them. So that, look for that. That was very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
And thank you for that. And thank you.
Yeah. And Lily, a histogram is something that sort of measures what kind of exposure in different spots of the photo you're going to get. It shows where your light and exposure is. Thank you, Jerry, for that. So it's on a lot of digital cameras. I think you're on mute, Lily.
Oh, there. Okay. Is that work? Yeah, I resonated with everything Wendy was saying, and you may be covering this later, but this whole issue about seeing, not being able to see. I mean, maybe it's a depth perception thing, but this whole thing about you take a picture and you don't know there's a tree sticking out behind somebody's head, and you're trying, and you're like there's no way you would have seen that, and then you take it and you're like, oh. And you can't Photoshop it out if you don't know how to do that. So, I just wonder if there's any tips for how we can do things for composition where we can't see it very well.
Right, right. So yeah, let me get into that a little bit. Let me share my screen again. And I may skip ahead on that one. One thing I'll touch on that in a second, Lily. One thing, since I've got this up here, another thing to think about is just the depth of field, which you can control a lot of times with your aperture on your camera, or if you've got a portrait mode on your smartphone, or in some cases, even the automatic settings on a digital camera will have this too. Here you've got a very wide depth of field here. And that means everything is pretty much in focus. Whereas here you've got this nice soft background, right? That's a nice effect to get for close-ups and portraits and things like that. Here's another example where you've got a wide depth of field, everything's in focus, as opposed to this. You get this nice speckled lighting effect in the back. And here's another example of the difference. There's a shallow depth of field, and same here. This is wide, everything's in focus, and here it fades out. And here's an example of something I did with my phone, with my iPhone. Took this picture of my niece. I first just used my normal camera settings, and then I set it to portrait mode, and I got this. So if you have that portrait mode, and I do teach a class on the iPhone camera, and I can walk you through that setting and everything else. I also teach a class on photo apps that you could use to get this effect, even if you didn't take the picture that way. So there are ways of achieving this digitally.
Is there a certain iPhone? Which iPhone do you have? Or does it
I
matter?
have an iPhone 11, and I think they started the portrait mode with the iPhone 7 Plus.
Okay, and I do have a 7 Plus.
Okay, so it should be on there. Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about that whole composition thing, the problem with not seeing things. So, you know, a couple people mentioned the grid is really what we're talking about here. And when you're applying what they call the rule of thirds, you are dividing, sometimes just mentally, other times you might have a grid capability on your device that will allow you to do this, but you're basically segmenting the frame into 9 pieces, both horizontally, and you'll have it in thirds, both horizontally and vertically, creating 9 parts. Now, one thing I do when I have that on is, one thing I want to be a little off center a lot of times with my composition. And so I'll use this to see maybe my main subject the grid might be one of the grid lines running right through that subject. But another thing I do is, if I've got time, I'm going to look in each one of these squares and just narrow it down to each individual square. I'll look at this. Is there anything in here I don't want? Is there anything in here I don't want? Is there anything in here I don't want? I know it's a little tedious, but if you've got the time to do that as you're composing, say, a landscape or something like that, that is something where that grid can come in handy. And here again, that's another example of breaking it into thirds. Never be afraid of negative space. A lot of times that can make a photo even more interesting than if you put this right smack dab in the middle and tried to take up a lot more real estate in the frame with the actual, in this case, the lighthouse. Now here are some other examples of that rule of thirds. And you can do that even with a vertical orientation on your photo. Everything's just a little off center here. Although it's all right to also put it in the, put your subject in the center too on occasion. This is really nice for close-up shots of, say, flowers, Wildlife, a lot of times I think wildlife photographers do this because they don't have a whole lot of time to change the focus settings on their digital camera to do something off center. So they just focus in the central part of their frame. So one other thing that's nice to do is look for leading lines in a photo. This can create some interesting composition. As you can see here, this is all just leading up to the horizon, and that goes right in the center of the photo. Same here with a tall building taken from below. It ends right there, smack dab in the middle. Always nice to get curves and bends and spirals when you can. That always makes for an interesting look. Whether that's in an alley or a path or something like that. I'd love to take pictures of spiral staircases. I don't get that much opportunity to do it, but I always think those look really cool. Something else when you're taking, especially with landscapes, looking for interesting objects in the foreground to include in the composition like this. I think having these rocks, and they have kind of a nice smooth texture to them, really adds a lot to this sunset picture at the beach. Same with these flowers. You've got this big mountainscape here, but the flowers in the foreground are nice. Sometimes even people, and they don't even have to be in focus. And something else that I think makes for some really stunning photography sometimes is a sense of scale that you can create where you've got a person or an animal or something else in their environment, and that environment is quite larger than them. So if you'll notice here, this is a picture that I took years ago in Yosemite National Park. I got this rock climber down here, and it just shows what he's traversing. Here's another good example of some canoers in a mountain setting behind them. Another cool composition technique is just filling the frame. This is great when you've got a bunch of flowers or any kind of pile of something, even fruit or something like that. And sometimes you can even do that with a face, say like of an animal or something like that. And one other thing that is fun to do is to, they call it frame within frame or frame in frame, and finding things to sort of frame your subject. So this little street scene, it's got a nice little greenery for a frame around it. And you can do that with entryways and things like that. And doesn't have to be square. It can be circular, like a tube. Any kind of portal you can look, it makes for interesting portraits sometimes. And it's also kind of fun sometimes to just frame faces that way. Take this, you've got just a blanket framing the face of this dog. And I don't know how many of you have tried to do long exposures. I like to do long exposures. They're a little challenging to do in the middle of the day. You have to have the right filters for a lens. I have discovered a couple of apps for mobile phones that you can download to get this effect with the water. But if you've got your camera on a tripod or something like that, and you're standing perfectly still, as everything is in sharp view except for the water. And because the exposure is longer, it's capturing this in motion. And that's how you get that nice blur effect on the water. You can see it here with the flowing water here as well. And some people like to do that at night with bright lights, like on a Ferris wheel or cars speeding by. And some people like to use unique angles, maybe get, this is much harder for me to do now. My knees don't want to cooperate, so crouching is hard. laying flat, or sometimes just shooting up if I'm in a place where there are a lot of tall things around. But sometimes you can get some pretty interesting angles. Even people shots are interesting doing it that way. And sometimes shooting straight up can make for an interesting look. And one last technique I encourage is to break the rules. I've thrown a lot of things here that may sound like you have to follow all of this to do really great photography, and it is subjective and it is an art. So, and I think Wendy's reaction to that one photo I showed of that street is a perfect example, where some people really like certain elements in a photo, like harsh shadows or a lot of shadowing, things like that, and other people may not. So I present these as just a few techniques to follow as you're getting used to it. But the more you photograph, the more you can find ways to sort of innovate and stretch the boundaries a little bit. Okay, other thoughts?
One thing, this is Jerry Bark. One thing I do for composition, even when I'm trying to shoot something pretty quickly, maybe it's nature and it's on the fly, but I check all four corners. Mm-hmm. And that really helps that I'm not cutting something off, or that it just helps. I just think all four corners.
Yeah. That is a good idea, and that can help you avoid having to crop later on if you're trying to edit it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I still do quite a bit of.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, it does. There are sometimes on composition where just moving something slightly makes the photo so much more interesting, or sometimes just less distracting.
Yeah.
And while not necessarily doing the whole 9 quadrants in the rule of thirds, just looking at all four corners helps me.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Oh, it looks like Wendy left. Okay. Other questions? No? Okay.
There's something in chat.
There's a question.
Any tip? I'm sorry, I missed that. Any tips for people to look natural when smiling? That's an interesting question. Actually, Charlie, I've got a class on portrait photography that you might be interested in. I sometimes like to catch people when they are not looking at the camera, when they're not really aware that I'm taking a picture of them. Now, sometimes if you really want them to pose, you might tell them a joke, or say something witty to kind of get that natural smile to come out. Some people can be really self-conscious. Others just hate to get their picture taken. My mother is a perfect example. Trying to get her to smile in a picture is next to impossible. And I don't know why, because when she's not in front of a camera, she smiles all the time. But as soon as she sees that lens pointed at her, she really gets very stone-faced. So it kind of depends on what your relationship is with the subject and how you can kind of put them at ease. But I will say too, I talk a lot about that in that portrait class, if you're interested in that. So, okay. Maybe have time for one more question if anybody has one.
Scott, did you say you are going to do a class that gives some basics on post-processing?
I would like to, yeah. Well, I actually am already teaching a class on Photoshop that just an intro to Photoshop that started last week. So that is coming up, and there are other kinds of photo editing software that some that I've used that I think I'm going to try to create some classes around as well. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, let me just wrap things up with some takeaways. Again, be aware of the lighting and try to make the most of shadows and light streaming into windows and so forth. A lot of times it's good to look for even lighting. And again, some of the best times of the day to take outdoor photographs in particular is in the morning or evening. Remember that rule of thirds and try positioning your subjects off center from time to time. Look for those leading lines and bends and curves to create some interesting shapes within your photo. You can always fill the frame. And remember your depth of field, what's in sharp focus in mind when you can do it. So I want to say thanks for being here today. And if you would like to share your experience or share your own photography, we would love to hear, love for you to do that. If you're sharing anything that you've taken on your social media feeds like Instagram or Facebook, and you've applied anything you've learned from a Get Setup class, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little reference with the hashtag Get Setup, we'd always be very grateful. You can also drop a line to Liz on our marketing team. She is always looking for people to showcase, people in our learner community to showcase on our social media outreach and also our blog. Want to tell you about some related classes coming up. There is a class, I think these are all tomorrow, on how to digitize analog home videos, one on finding and sharing fun ideas on Pinterest. And I think a lot of people post some of their photography on Pinterest, and an introduction to art journaling. And my next classes, I have one on tips for better writing that is coming up. And then there is another class. I do have one in the morning on iPhone basics as well. And then tomorrow afternoon, I'm teaching a class. Will be the debut of this class on nature photography. It's part of a bundle of nature photography classes, and this one focuses on landscapes. So I'll get into a lot more detail about landscape composition and timing and things like that. So we'll be sending you these class notes with some other class suggestions, and also a link to view the entire schedule on Get Setup. And you can also, when you do that, sign up for a class. Let me show you this. New feature we have on the site allows you, when you sign up for a new class, to try to get a friend to sign up too. You can go to any class and share it with somebody. You just, if you notice here, I've got a click here, and you can share it on Facebook, on WhatsApp, or just email it to anybody who you want to notify about it. Maybe say, hey, why don't you take this class with me? And you also will have a link to our feedback form where you can rate the guide and the session on a 5-star scale, any number of stars you want to give it. And you can also provide us with any comments you have about what worked about the class, what you didn't like about it, and what you think might make it better. And lastly, down here, you are able to suggest classes that we might develop for you. We take a lot of feedback from our learners to develop new classes to present to you. So if there's something you're really interested in learning and you don't see it on our class schedule, let us know, because we really rely on you to let us know what's in demand. So lastly, if you can spread the word about Get Set Up to your friends, that would be great. We're trying to really reach out and help as many people as we possibly can. We do host, allow a platform for learners to host interest groups on Get Set Up. If you're interested in heading up some kind of discussion group or something like that on a hobby or a topic, let us know. And you can do that by emailing us at help@getsetup.io. And that is also the email you can use to request a recording of this session.
Scott, how frequently do the classes recycle?
Pretty frequently. A lot of them are at least once a week. Others, it may be, a couple of weeks in between, but they're pretty regular. Yeah.
So I have some conflict tomorrow with regard to the landscaping, and I was going to be traveling the end of the month, so hopefully it'll come up again. Thank you very much. This was very helpful. I enjoyed it.
Okay, that's great. Well, thanks for being here. And I will be sending those notes off to you later, and enjoyed spending this hour with you. Okay, everybody have a great evening.